friends, I'm Deidre from Enjoy Wellness Movement. I'm really happy you're here with me today. We're here to have a short discussion on a very broad subject, and that's about the sacroiliac joint. So let me show you on Mr. Bones what this joint really is. This is the sacrum. It's the end part of our spine. It's this V'd structure that the coccyx or the tailbone comes off of. So sacrum right here. And then these are the ilium bones of the pelvis. Okay, we have one on each side. So where these bones meet, the sacrum and the ilium, that's how it gets its name, sacroiliac joint, is the joint right here where they meet. So this joint is meant for weight bearers. It's a weight-bearing joint. So all of the weight from your upper body has a force that comes down, and gravity has that force that comes down and is managed by the pelvis. So we consider the pelvis the foundation of your body. So to the inside, this is what the sacroiliac joints look like. And here you can see where the sacrum comes into the ilium. And then we have a lot of ligaments that support that stabilization of your pelvis. Okay, ligaments in nature, all around joints, are very collagenous tissues. They're very dense tissues, and they're that way for a reason. They're very strong and tough because they're made to actually limit the movement of our joints. So don't stretch your joints. Joints should be, the focus needs to be on stability, not so much mobility. Okay, we need some mobility, but not too much, or that creates a painful situation. So these joints are little shallow dish joints. I'm going to put Mr. Bones over here. And they're only meant to move about 2 to 5 millimeters, okay, when they groove together. So not a whole lot of movement, because again, they're managing the force, the gravitational forces, and the weight structure of your spine and all that downward force, and the pelvis and the joints of the pelvis, the sacroiliac joints that we're talking about specifically today, they manage the ground force. So every time your foot strikes the ground, or when you're standing, that force transmission is moved up through the legs and into your pelvis. So we need these joints to be really strong and very stable for us. Okay. So one of the absolute first things we need to pay an enormous amount of if your joints are sore. So what happens, a lot of people will come to me and say, I have low back pain. So I'll say, where is your low back pain? So this to me is low back pain, like literally in the lumbar back, but where they'll point to or describe is down here in the butt. So you can think about where those little divots are in the back body. Most of you will be able to visualize that. That's the sacroiliac joint area. So very often it's not low back pain, it's more sacroiliac joint pain, because very often the structure can become imbalanced. Most of us actually have pelvic imbalances where one side of the pelvis might be up higher. We call that an upslip, or maybe it's rotated. These bones just get out of whack. So that puts extra strain on a constant basis on the SI joints. So posture's huge. And I know a lot of people just go, oh, posture, can't make that big of a difference. It makes a huge difference. Please stand up with me. I want you to know how you stand. If you're a person that has SI joint pain, you have to start paying attention to this. So in your standing position, just kind of walk your feet in. You can turn a few different directions if you want to. It doesn't matter so much. Then I want you to imagine you've been standing in a really long line. And I want you to just go into where your body would hang out. What would happen to it? So for me, if I'm being very honest and I wasn't paying attention to my body, I would put the majority of my weight down onto my right leg. I would have a tendency to lock my right knee out. Okay, so that's overstretching a joint. That's a no-no. So I'd have to pay attention to unlocking the knee. And it would shift and torque my pelvis so that there's an imbalance now in the pressure of my SI joints. So if you're doing that all the time, or sometimes, like you could imagine work like a mail carrier that has a big bag, or a mom that's carrying a baby around all the time. It creates these postural imbalances. You know, maybe a bus driver, a grocery person, cashier that's always torquing or turning one direction. So that would be a vulnerable place, repetitive posture that torques your pelvis. So for you, think about not only your work situation and environment, but how do you stand on your feet? Do you kick one foot out? So you notice with my natural posture, I would ground down on one side, which would mean I would kick the other side out, because my body's not going to want me to ground out there and then let this foot just hang out in mid-space. So your body will torque around the positions that you're carrying posturally. So it's very important to start paying attention. Do you have one foot that's always a little bit in front of the other? So notice that and get really curious about it. And you might literally have to check yourself like hundreds of times a day, okay? Which sounds super extreme, like don't get too, too intense about it. Don't get OCD about it, but start watching all the time. Get very interested about the patterns, because those are going to be the cause of your pain. This is just the symptom, and we can treat symptoms all day long, but if you don't get to the cause, we're never going to get results with treating that symptom. So look for the cause, and it might be your posture. In seated posture, do you always cross one leg over the other? Do you sit on one side of the furniture all the time? I'm guilty of this. And kick your legs over to one side. So some of you would be like, yeah, my legs are always kicked this way. I never sit this way. I never put my feet on the floor. Oh, I have a lazy boy. I guess I could kick those legs up if I wanted to, but I always sit like this. Or maybe you have a sleeping pattern that you cross your legs like this. If you do that all the time, that's going to set some pretty heavy patterns into your body. Do you always sleep on one side? So you have to think about lying posture as well, with one leg tucked up tight into the body. We can spend hours in our sleeping position, so all that stuff matters. So if that's the case, think about what can I do to level my pelvis out? So if I were a side sleeper, I would put a knee pillow in between my legs to get my pelvis as level as possible here. Okay. So little things that you can do, that'll be another discussion for another day. I really want to show you some, like three great exercises to start with, to start stabilizing those sacroiliac joints. So one, come onto your hands and knees. I like to call this spinal stabilization. Remember, your sacrum is part of your spine, so this is also SI joint stabilization. So come onto hands and knees if this is a comfortable position for you to get into. Get soft in your joints, so we don't want to lock our joints out and put pressure into them. We have to be really considerate about that and mindful of it. So soften your joints. Let your organs come into the body, so hug them back in. Don't let them fall to the front porch, which would be the floor in this case. So you can also think about just hugging your front body to your back body to stabilize your spinal posture. And then just extend one leg out. And notice if you really lean, and if you really lean like with my left leg extending, if I were to lean into the right side, you could press down into the floor a little bit more with the right leg to feel that stabilization come into the pelvis. You want to think about being able to have a block or a cup of tea right on your sacrum. Balance a block there. And then you could see if you could extend that opposite arm out. So this is really great for core strength, which is essential for healthy SI joints. All of those soft tissues work together to be dynamic stabilizers for the body. And then drop down, lower down. Mindfully reconnect to the earth. Feel the forced transition. Get curious about, oh wow, what happens in my pelvis when I start to move the pressure into my left leg to extend my right leg up, and then the left arm can join, and just feel what that feels like. If you have to bend the leg a little bit, that's okay. Your focus for this SI joints is really to create that stability in your pelvis for now. So you might have to even just work with the leg for a while if it's too much to lift your arm up. Once you start feeling yourself get really strong and stable, and don't move on until you feel that, then you can start like moving the arm and leg out on a diagonal. So be really honest about what you're ready for. If there's any pain in the joint, that is your body's wisdom saying, knock it off. That's hurting me. So I need you to really listen to that. Okay, your body has enormous wisdom, incredible intuition. If you have pain, it's your body's biggest gift to you, saying, hey, would you pay attention? We've got this imbalance going on. Okay, not you're broken, not you're wrecked, not, oh, I'm never going to be the same. Oh, it's not that, oh, I'm just getting old. No, you have an imbalance. So let's treat the imbalance so you can move on. So some people call that bird dog. You can call it whatever you want. That's the movement. Exercise 1. Start doing with that. Just start doing it. I'm not a fan. I know you want to know how many repetitions and how long should I hold it. I want you to take your power back. I want you start doing less rather than kicking your own butt, or like my friend says, beasting on yourself. Don't beast on yourself. Actually, less is more in this, okay? Less is more. So just start out small. Maybe just do 3 and hold it until you feel like you've held it long enough. Just, I need you to be there with your body. I don't need you to, your body needs you to be there, feeling exactly what's going on inside. So start working with that. It's very, very important. Bridge is the next position. So go ahead and come down to bridge. You might have your block handy if you have one. It's not a big deal if you don't. I'll do another series with pelvic stabilization using a block and a strap later. But for this video, just bringing your body into bridge position, so feet about pelvic bone distance apart. Think more about bone than flesh distance, and then ground down with your arms. I actually like to put my arms palms up to just encourage my chest to stay open here. And then press down into the floor with your feet. See how you do that. See if even in this position, when you press down into your feet to lift your pelvis up, do you press down more into one side than another? So that might be your point where you just start managing things. Like, am I pressing evenly? What leg wants to do more? What foot grounds more? So just feel that down and up action a few times. Inhale on the way up. If you wanted to stabilize, you could take a block, squeeze it in between your thighs. If you have a block, again, if you don't worry about it. And lift up and down. Depending on the size of your bones and your pelvic structure, you might go to the wide position with the block, or you might go more narrow to hug in. Okay, if you're a little body, if you're just you're structurally small, I would hug in with the narrow part. And if you have a larger boned structure, then I would go to the wide part. Remember, the block is an option. So I would start here. Think about a level being right on your pelvic bones. So these are the front of those bones that we looked at. This is the anterior spine of the iliac crest. And so you can feel those bones and imagine a level right across them. So I want you to keep this level, okay? Feel what level might feel like to you. And then you can even tap your fingers there to keep yourself honest. And just start by seeing if you can lift one heel up without the pelvis tipping. So if you had a bowl of water inside the bowl of your pelvis, don't let it spill. And then put the heel down and lift the other heel up. Really feel what's happening in your body. Slowly lower the heel down. Notice if you have one foot in front of the other or not. Even if you have to sit up and look, that's okay. Just start using your proprioceptive awareness. That means, where's my body in relationship to my environment? And then if that feels pretty easy to level out, that's a big if. So if it doesn't, stay with that. Okay, only if that feels really easy to you, you could actually lift one foot up off the floor a tiny bit. So don't lift the leg up here. I want you to just barely lift it up, because that's going to ask right there, right in that tiny, tiny shift, it's going to ask your pelvis to stabilize. So notice if one side of the pelvis drops. If it does, you gotta go back. Gotta go back to that first movement before you progress, or you'll just go backwards. You know, it'll be a hot spot for your sacrum. Your sacrum won't like it. unless you're ready for it. And maybe you do less of this. Again, if you lift a leg and there's this, oh, sharp pain that goes through your pelvis, that's your body going, wow, I am not ready for that progression yet. So you've got to get your ego out of the way. This is not you being good or bad about anything. This is just a practice to see what's happening. So you're really doing a compassionate inquiry into your body. So maybe your position at first is to just do the bridge down and up and see if you can use even pressure on your feet. So the bridge is that movement number 2. Good. And then let's go to a different position. Go ahead and rock onto your side and roll to your belly. Come up onto your forearms and plant your pelvis down into the ground. So feel both sides of the front of your pelvis grounding in. Rather than sinking into the shoulders, press down into the earth and lift the chest up and lift the heart up. And then from this position, let's just test the waters. Lift one leg up, press the other leg down, see what that feels like. Then try the other side. Find the difference between the two sides there. You might notice that one side feels a little weaker in that movement than another. If I found that to be true in my own body, I would probably pay more attention to that side, work to strengthen that side that feels a little bit weaker. Okay, if you can do that with no pain, remember that's an if. Be very, very honest with yourself and your body because you're caring for it. Okay, too much will just be too much. If that felt okay, take a deep breath. Feel like your belly lifts away from the earth, so you're using your core strength. Lift both legs up. Open the legs out. When you open the legs out, the sacrum actually goes forward a little bit in relation to those pelvic bones. You don't have to hold this long. Squeeze the legs in. Okay. When we do that, the sacrum actually tilts back a little bit. Open out. So the sacrum tilts forward a tiny bit. We call that nutation. When we squeeze in, counter nutation. Feel what that feels like. You're now developing a relationship between your glutes, your core, your erectors in your spine, and all the rest of the supporting tissues. So you should feel like the butt's really working to help stabilize. That's very important to teach your body. So out and in, because we do have a connection into the pelvic floor that's extremely important when talking about the pelvis. When we come out, the sits bones or the ischial tuberosities move out. That means your pelvic floor is opening, so we inhale. Exhale, squeeze in. You feel like you're just coming back home in your pelvis. You hug in there, really hug in. And then inhale, open out. Go ahead and soften the pelvic floor a little bit when you open out. And then exhale, feel like the pelvic floor hugs together and maybe up towards your heart. You don't have to do that really strongly. Just do it. It's a very subtle action. And play with that. That might come over time. Good. If this were to hurt my back, I would drop my head down onto stacked hands, or you could stack fists. You could even use your trusty little block friend and put your forehead on a block. Okay. Lower the pelvis down, lower the legs down. Take the hands to the sides of the floor. Scoop the belly off the earth first. Feel that action in your pelvis, your sacrum, your SI joints. From that stability, press your hands into the earth. And we're done with our practice for today. So even if you just take one of those things, the bird dog, the bridge, or the prone leg lifts. Okay. There's some you might not like as well as others. That's okay. Those might be the ones you need most. Play with that 3-part sequence, and there'll be more to come later. Thanks for taking care of yourself. I love you.